In the past, I tend to start talking and then I don't shut up. So rather than activate the mind, um, prior to meditation, I'd rather start out of a place of quietude. It's best in the morning to meditate before your mind has become very active, um, which is why the three bowls in silence is a really nice way to start the practice. Thank you, everybody who's joining this morning. It's always so nice to sit and connect with people, even if it's in this virtual space for now. And I do have a number of things I'd like to share, but I'll wait until after the meditation to go through a couple of those things. I'm also going to try to keep the meditation and tea under an hour, hopefully around 45-50 minutes, and then save a few minutes to just share a couple things. And then if anybody has any questions, they're welcome to ask. So thank you, everybody, for joining this morning. I hope you've got a kettle ready and some good tea. I'm drinking Rolling Thunder, which we mentioned in the newsletter, and I'm going to say some more about this tea and what's so special about it afterwards. So that's that for now. So what I'd like to do is just do 3 bowls in silence, and then we'll meditate for maybe 20-30 minutes, and then open it up. So if you're still drinking tea, kind of start to wrap up the third bowl here. So that 15-minute practice, if done regularly and with sincerity, can have a really profoundly beneficial impact on one's life. You know, I've talked in other videos and other classes about intentionality or working with the three bowls in a particular way, kind of out of the Taoist tradition, and different approaches to that practice. But if one isn't working with a specific intention or intentions, or doesn't have somebody in their life that they really want to call to presence during that session, even just taking the three bowls to let yourself drop into the body so that the mind and the emotions and the body are working more in unison, they're working together, as opposed to living most of our lives lost in thought, in our minds, in discursive associative thinking, in the past and the future, but really cultivating a deeper relationship between the mind and the emotions and the body, such that they're working together, and that we have more of our intuitive capacity and more of our somatic intelligence available as we navigate life, especially when there's so much in the external world going on. It's quite a complex world we find ourselves in. Having a navigating system that's oriented internally, where the mind and the body and the emotions are working together. In some traditions, they would say spirit is born of the unified functioning of those three different centers, those three different aspects of the self. The three bowl practice can be a practice not only of bringing the interior life and the exterior life closer together so that they're working in unison, but also the different aspects of the self are working together. Or if you're not treating it as a cultivation practice, but just to enjoy some good tea, you will enjoy the tea a lot more if you're really present to the entire sensorium of the aroma, the flavors, the appearance, the brewing itself. Mindfulness never diminishes the quality of anything. I think that goes without saying, but the more we are aware, the more we bring our fullness to an experience, the more we are available to the experience, the more life it has. It's what we bring to an experience that breathes life into it. And so the three bowl practice, if you're not doing something specific like setting intentions or working with what kind of energy you want to carry into the day, it can even just be a practice of just letting go, letting go. And you'll notice, if that's the intention, is just to be present with the tea, that the breath becomes deeper, the shoulders will let go of all that tension. You know, we work all day on computers, right? And we're like turtles coming out of the shell or something. So just relaxing the body, relaxing the mind, letting go of all the fluctuating mental wavelengths and ideas and opinions and thoughts and beliefs, just for a period of time, letting it all go. It's really allowing the psychic system, the emotions and the mind just to rest for this 15 minutes, 20 minutes. That creates an energy over time that then will carry into your day. And it's really very powerful practice. It seems so simple, but Like Thich Nhat Hanh says, the truth you should be able to explain to a 5-year-old. You know, it's not, when things become quite complicated, it usually is a mental thing. It's not an actual truism. The simple practice of letting go and relaxing into this practice in the morning can have an extraordinary and profound effect over one's day. And I'm speaking from my own experience and from the experience of, at this point, thousands of people who've shared with me that it's been a very powerful practice. The other one thing I want to say about it is, if you're in partnership with somebody, having a practice of drinking 3 bowls together in the morning with no phones, no newspapers, no other things, and creating some space around that to just communicate and share from an authentic place. What brings about authenticity is asking questions. It's difficult sometimes to find an authentic question, but inquiring into the other person's life, even if you've known them for 20 years and live with them, human beings are not a static, fixed thing. We are a process. We are an evolving process. Sometimes we're devolving, right? But because we are a process, there's constant change and transformation happening. And by asking sincere questions, sometimes that's the most profound healing. When I've worked with patients a lot, sometimes just asking questions and then being in my body and really listening attentively and repeating back to them what I'm hearing. Sometimes that's as healing as anything you can do with acupuncture needles or herbs or body work or anything. Just being seen and validated is extraordinarily powerful, and it's the foundation for true intimacy and vulnerability in a relationship. So just drinking 3 bowls together, either in silence and maybe making eye contact, or just communicating from this authentic place, either in friendships or in partnerships, can have an incredibly powerful influence on establishing a baseline of vulnerability, intimacy, and authenticity in a relationship. With my partner, it's the foundation for our relationship, our communication being strong, being on the same page, is just setting aside time in the morning just to drink tea together and then meditate. We have a 9-month-old, so it doesn't always go quite as planned, but the intention is there, and so it can have a really beautiful influence on our communication. So now I'm breaking the things that I said I was going to do, which is not start talking. But so let's sit for meditation, and I'll talk a little bit about the approach I want to take with meditation going forward, because I'm going to be hosting every week, hopefully until the end of time. And so if you want to find a seated position, if you're not already seated, I find it helpful to have the legs, you want the shins, the front of the shins, to be rested flat. And so that means you have to elevate your butt a little bit unless you're quite flexible. So you can put a pillow under your bum. In a lot of descriptions, especially in Zen Buddhism, of the meditation, it will literally describe the seated position in Zazen and then say, just observe the breath. So Zazen literally means just sit. For a lot of us Westerners, we need a little more instruction than that to get started. So really what you're going for is a very strong foundation. They say sit like a mountain. And really what that means is that if somebody were to come and push you, your foundation's very strong. You want the foundation to be strong so that all these micro movements and muscles in the body aren't trying to stabilize you. You want to feel like, there's a term called aditan, which means strong determination. And the right attitude towards meditation is strong determination not to move. And there's a certain point at which with practice, you can drop into that state of not moving, and that gives the mind the opportunity to really drop out. It's stable. When the body is stabilized, the mind begins to stabilize. So finding a seated position where you feel stable, rolling forward a bit on the tailbone so that the spine is straight. If there's really one thing in meditation that I feel is essential, it's that the spine is straight. To straighten the spine, you want to bring the chin back and tuck down a little bit so that the eyes are slightly downwards. And the back of the head, the occiput, is lifting slightly upwards. The hands, left hand can rest in the right, and the thumbs are just touching. Suzuki describes this as a piece of paper could slide between the thumbs. And what it means is that there's awareness there. They're not just kind of relaxing or whatever, but they're actually holding. There's a tension there. And they can rest just gently in the lap. So as you settle into that position, you can start to let your eyes close, and we'll begin the meditation. So beginning to just connect with the breath, just observing the inhalation and exhalation through the nostrils, not trying to change anything. Just beginning to connect with the cadence of the breath. It helps me to mark the beginning of the meditation just with a brief bow. This marks it as a beginning. It's also a bow to your higher self, your future self, to your higher nature. It's an acknowledgement of reverence for your taking care of yourself and setting aside some time. Coming back to the breath. Starting with the head and moving down through the body, just notice any areas of tightness, tension, contraction, anywhere where you're holding in the muscles or myofascia, maybe in the neck or shoulders. And breathing into these areas, inviting them to relax while still maintaining a straight spine. Just spending a few minutes scanning the body. If you notice that the breath is choppy or unsmooth, taking some deep breaths through the nostrils, just to soothe the nervous system and the mind. There's nowhere else to be, nothing that has to be done. As you breathe into areas of tightness or tension, feeling a sense of gratitude for this moment to let it go. To be free of that tension for this moment. Free of the future or the past. Free of any worry or anxiety. Free of any clinging or attachment. Just for this moment to be here. To be available to life. To be malleable and porous and open. And just breathing through the whole body. Feeling the spaciousness of the body like the open sky. Beginning to draw the breath and the attention back to the nostrils, narrowing the focus of attention to the sensation of the breath as it enters and exits the nose. Feeling a smile around the eyes, letting the teeth gently touch with the tongue against the upper palate. Not trying to change the breath, just observing the inhalation and exhalation, just the sensations. As the mind tries to wander away, just gently inviting it back to observing the breath. This moment, right here and now. Holding in your awareness that you can attend to all those thoughts later on. For now, just be here. Again, noticing if the shoulders have started to tense or the arms. And again, relaxing the whole body, coming back to the breath. And when the mind wanders, you can take a couple deep breaths, bringing your attention back to the sensation at the nostrils, inhaling and exhaling. If the mind is particularly active and you're unable to stay with the breath, with each exhalation you might count 1, and the next exhalation 2, counting up to 10 and back down to 1, until the attention stabilizes and you can drop the counting. We'll take a few minutes just to stay with the breath. As the mind wanders, just invite it back to observing the breathing. As the mind tries to insert ideas about what should or shouldn't be happening, about the value or the quality of this time, just observe those thoughts. Just observe them with openness, curiosity, witnessing and observing them without them taking you away from the breath. Just observe impartially, without attachment to them, without judgment. Just observe this flow of thoughts. And when it's available, just come back to observing the breathing. Be mindful of mind. Be mindful of thoughts. And return to the breathing. Sitting up a little straighter, feeling like there's a golden thread at the crown, just tugging up ever so slightly, drawing the spine straight. And another thread coming out the bottom of your body, the perineum pulling down into the earth like a taproot. Feeling the spine taut and tall. And taking a couple deep breaths through the nostrils. And gathering the attention at the crown of the head. Feeling an openness and lightness here. And we're going to do some rounds of breathing, opening up the psychic system and the central channels of the body. So the big inhalation drawing from the crown all the way down to the perineum, to your root, and exhaling all the way up the spine, back to the top. We'll do some rounds at your own pace. As you inhale, you can move from the crown through the center of the head, through the throat, maybe swallowing and opening the throat chakra down, through the heart, the umbilicus, down through the pubic region, all the way down through the sacrum, down to the root. And then exhaling all the way back up the spine and up through all the 7 centers of the body, all the way back up to the crown. Resting there for a couple breaths and then inhaling back down. Imagining each center opening. With the breath, you're rinsing and cleansing and opening the channels of the body, opening these centers. We'll do a couple rounds for a minute or two at your own pace. As you reach the crown or the root, taking a moment just to pause in between the breaths, just to pause in this still point before starting the next round. Feeling a sensation of emptiness and then fullness, emptiness, fullness. Now allowing the attention to gather at the crown. Wherever you are in the round of breathing, just once it arrives to the crown, just stay there for a bit. We're going to do a couple rounds of what's called the double breath. So at the crown, exhaling all the way out. With the inhalation slowly drawing downwards through the center of the head, through the throat, swallowing down into the heart, and with the full inhalation into the heart, holding the breath and feeling the wish to grow, saying, I wish to grow. While holding the breath, feeling the heart open, expanding. And at the extremity of holding, feeling that opening, exhaling 2/5 of the breath and inhaling back down into the belly and holding, feeling the wish to grow. I wish to grow. Holding, feeling the expansion, and then exhaling all the way down to the root and allowing the exhale to roll back up the spine, all the way up the spine, back to the crown. Feeling the opening in the top of the head. We'll do a couple rounds so it becomes more familiar. So breathing, inhaling and exhaling at the crown. If there's any tension or tightness in the body, just letting it go with the exhalation. Inhaling and exhaling all the way at the crown. And with the next inhalation, drawing the energy down through the center of the head, down through the throat, down into the heart, the anahata, and holding in the heart. Hold the breath and feel the wish to grow. Feel an expansion and opening of the heart. While holding the breath. Once you feel the expansion, you exhale 2/5 of a breath and inhale the rest back down, drawing that wish down into the belly. Just below the umbilicus, hold the attention and hold the breath, feeling the wish. I wish to grow. I wish to grow. Connecting that wish to the willpower. And exhaling down through the pubic region, down to the root, and rolling back up the spine, through all the centers, back up, up, up to the crown. Maybe feeling a buzzing or tingling in the crown. The sensation of openness. A couple inhalations and exhalations at the crown, allowing the attention to gather there. big exhalation, let going of any tension in the body, any thoughts, any ideas. And with a big inhalation, drawing the energy from the crown down through the center of the head, down through the throat, and into the heart, holding the breath, holding the wish to grow, feeling the expansion of the heart, a luminous openness. I wish to grow. Maybe feeling that expansion beyond the body, an opening. Exhaling 2/5 of the breath and drawing it back down through the heart, down into the belly, connecting with the will, holding the breath there, feeling the wish to grow. And once you feel the expansion, exhaling down through the second and first chakra, letting it roll back up the spine. If you run out of breath, it's okay. Inhale and exhale again, up the spine, up through the throat and the head. And allowing the attention to gather at the crown. A big inhalation, just drawing the energy back down into the heart and holding it there. Bringing the hands together in prayer at the heart center. May any challenges or difficulties that arise in this day be used as fuel for growth. May the peace and harmony that I've cultivated in this practice shine from my eyes, alleviating the suffering of all those I encounter. All beings without number, I vow to support. Endless blind passions, I vow to uproot. Wisdom gates beyond measure, I vow to penetrate. The great way of truth, I vow to attain. May all beings be free. May all beings know joy and happiness. May all beings know kindness. May all beings know purpose. May all beings be free. As you're ready, you can start to move the body a bit. And open your eyes. All right. It's a nice way to start the day, I think. So, couple things I want to mention here is this approach to meditation. I've studied a lot of different practices of meditation, and I think there's real value in not intermingling and practicing all different types of meditation. It can be a bit confusing. So kind of going forward, I'll be practicing maybe for the next month or two, work with the double breath, and really more practices that focus on levels of the mind. So first is really observing thoughts as they arise and cultivating a deeper capacity for just observing thoughts as they arise. The second kind of stage of that will be around holding one theme or holding one idea and not deviating from it. So staying with it, which is cultivating the will and the capacity for concentration and focus. And the third practice at the level of mind will really be about maintaining a open blankness of the mind, or sunya, of emptiness of the mind, being able to hold emptiness of the mind. So as thoughts arise on the horizon of the awareness, they can fall back down before they can grab hold and take you somewhere, take you out of meditation. So those three levels of the mind are necessary to be able to maintain those in order to go into some of the deeper work with the Taoist practices of cultivating the element, working with fire energy, working with air energy or earth energy, and pore breathing, which is opening the pores of the body, or some of the work with the nadis, or what we call the meridians in the Chinese system, of moving energy through the body, of working with elemental energies. In order to really do those practices, what are called the macrocosmic orbit, effectively, one has to be able to maintain either a state of emptiness or to be able to really stay with an idea for extended periods of time. So you'll notice if you're coming to these meditations regularly that they're following a sequence over time. And the previous meditations and classes I've done, so Saturdays we do classes and on Thursdays we do meditations, will be up on the website later today. Currently, I just put them all up on YouTube yesterday. So if you want to go back and see previous classes or anything, you're more than welcome to, of course. I try to give a description of what is in that class. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention. The second thing I wanted to mention was that I am doing consultations with people in a one-on-one basis. If they have specific questions related to meditation, to wellness, so like diet and lifestyle, to developing a practice, like a morning practice, or specific to tea, so maybe around different aspects of tea preparation, brewing, preparing charcoal, chashi, whatever. If there's an area of particular interest, I am doing consultations on a donation basis, kind of sliding scale, suggested donation. So if that's something of interest to anyone, you're more than welcome to email us at livingteas@gmail. I'm offering that because we're getting just a lot of questions and people feeling a bit confused, so we're trying to make these videos available. But in lieu of that, if people have really specific things they're working on or they want support with something, or it could be something within the realm of wellness, maybe something with addiction or with a diet or what have you, I'm happy to spend time with folks, and if I can help them at all, then that's our whole intention here. So that's that. And then the last thing I want to mention, for those of you who've stuck around this long, we're drinking this beautiful tea, Rolling Thunder. It's from Yu Mountain, which is probably the most famous tea mountain in Yunnan. And I worked to produce these cakes, and I'm proud of them. I think they're really extraordinary teas. It's the first red tea that we've private labeled here. So you can see this pretty packaging. Um, it's a really, really beautiful tea. It's a Dian, which is a term referring to red tea from Yunnan. And what I love about it is it's really sweet and syrupy and bright, but it also has the maltiness and depth of Yunnanese red teas. The reason it's a bit brighter and lighter is because we lower the oxidation rate in the processing, because we wanted to keep, instead of focusing as much just on flavor, we wanted to keep the energy of these old trees from Yiwu, because they're old growth trees. So the energy of this tea is really powerful. It's not stimulating and invigorating like other red teas. It's very bright and expansive. And so at this time of year, I'm starting to transition into lighter teas. And for a red tea, this is kind of an ideal spring red tea. And I'm offering just a discount if you want to buy a whole cake, or you want to try a smaller amount, and if you like it, buy a cake, just to people today on this serendipitous moment. So the code is Spring Red, 2 separate words, and it's just for Rolling Thunder. So the last thing I want to say about Rolling Thunder is it was named Rolling Thunder based on the Bob Dylan tour in the 70s, the Rolling Thunder Review Tour. And not many people know this, but Bob Dylan changed the name of that tour partway through it because he met a man named Rolling Thunder, who was a Native American medicine man who left such a deep impression on him that he changed the name of the tour, and he spent extra time with this man. And there's a book by Doug Boyd called Rolling Thunder about this medicine man. He also wrote another book called Mad Bear about another medicine man named Mad Bear. And these books are precursors to all the Carlos Castaneda books and all of that. One of the pillars in our tradition is shamanism and some of the shamanic practices around tea and plant medicine. And I really, really love both of those books. I've read them a couple times over the years. And so my suggestion / invitation on this Thursday morning is you might consider getting a discounted cake of Rolling Thunder and enjoying this beautiful book. Of course, that's obviously just a suggestion and invitation. At the moment, we're still unable to open the tea house. We are doing some private sessions here. But any support in terms of tea purchases or any donations or anything is greatly, deeply appreciated, as we're just kind of in this holding pattern until we are able to actually open the tea house. It's been a bit of a challenging past year financially because of that. But I feel like over the last couple of days, spring has really started to emerge, and there's a sense of renewal. And I've talked to a lot of friends who feel very positive about the direction things are going in the world. Even though there's a lot of complexity, there's a general kind of intuitive sense that things are becoming brighter and clearer and more positive, and hopefully over the coming 6 months we start to move in a really wonderful direction, both individually, which is the only thing we really have agency over, but also collectively. So that's my prayer, at least, and my hope for everybody coming to these sessions. So as per usual, I've rambled on more than I intended here, so I'm going to stop talking, and you're more than welcome to ask any questions if you'd like. I'll stick around for a few minutes and have a cup of tea or two. And if you need to get on with your day, then thank you so much for joining us. It means a lot to be able to share the way of tea and these practices with all of you out there. And I hope they bring some real value and some clarity and peace into your lives. So thank you for coming.
Okay, so I have one question. Earlier you said when you're with a partner, the tea in the morning with your partner, what kind of question, can you just give me an example of a type of question you would open up with?
The question is, of course, always going to be related to your personal relationship with them, but
Right.
in creating some space in your relationship for this kind of authentic communication, it makes it feel less awkward. If you're in the middle of like a busy day and you say, honey, how's your heart doing? They're gonna go, whoa, 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 what's going on here? So tea is kind of can be a profound facilitator. And you might ask a question like, what are you working on something that you're really excited about? Or what are you finding curiosity about or interest in? What are you, what's something you're grateful for today? What's one intention you have for today? Maybe it's a goal that you're both working on together or that you can share, some area of interest that both of you have together. And you say, well, what's one thing we can work on together this week? It's really more than necessarily the context of the exact question. It's about creating the space for it. The space that you're creating for more intimate communication and for being present with one another is as important as the content itself. And what I mean by that is, so often in relationships, we kind of get into autopilot because of the familiarity of the relationship. We don't give the other person the opportunity, the space to grow. And what I mean by that is our narrative of how, they're going to do this thing at that time, and this is how they're going to react to that, and this is how they are. We start saying things in our mind like, you always, or you never. As soon as you hear yourself saying you always or you never, you know that you're resting in the ego, because it's not true that the person is always doing this thing or never ever doing that thing. You never take the garbage out. It's probably not true. And so it's really more for creating a space of this openness of communication wherein you are allowing room for growth. You're allowing room to see each other. Like, when was the last time, and I don't know, maybe you have a relationship where this is normal, where you really made eye contact? And you didn't talk, you weren't trying to figure something out, you weren't making a plan. You were actually connecting at the level of being, not at the level of what do we have to do today, or what are, just really seeing the person. It's extraordinarily powerful to be seen and also to see somebody. When we feel really seen, it validates the significance of our existence independent of our status or our identity or who we think we are or what we're supposed to do or whatever. It is a validation of you're important as a human being, as a being, just by virtue of your existence. And that's what happens when we really see somebody. And it's also what happens when somebody really sees us. That is the place out of which purpose and potency and vitality comes. To recognize that really what's important is that we exist. How amazing. I mean, it's actually a miracle that you even exist. But we don't take the time to acknowledge that in others very often and in ourselves. Because we think it's about status and your financial status and how much you know and your education and what kind of house you live in and where you live and what you do. Like, we are so identified with all of that. And people go, no, I'm not identified with those things. I've connected with a deeper ground of being. But the reality is the ego is so extraordinarily clever that it will always find ways to create separation between yourself and just being. And so in a relationship, just taking the space to see one another and just even giving space. What would you like? I see you. I acknowledge you. What do you want to talk about? That alone is just quite profound in a relationship, because it's creating a different baseline of connection and intimacy. So my encouragement is just to first create the space. It's also like we say in our tradition, the primary meditation is to make space for meditation. You know, it's not necessarily about doing something. It's about like just sit down every day for 15 minutes. You know, that's hard enough to begin with. So, and I'm happy to talk more about that if you want individually, about the kind of questions or the things that might come up if you're really trying to create this space for connection. Another interesting thing that happens is your partner might be resistant to it because they don't want to be seen, or they don't have time for it. And it's like, if you don't have time for having a true, authentic relationship with the person you are most connected to, then there's something to look at there. There's something off, you know? So that was a long-winded answer, but I hope that was helpful.
I have a question, Colin.
Okay, hi, Jade.
Hi. There are a couple of questions on the chat that I just thought I would say aloud. One of them is, people are asking about the book you mentioned, Rolling Thunder, if you could just clarify that. And they're also asking what the code was for the red tea. And then my question is, I've actually had this question for a little while. I was wondering why you named this tea Rolling Thunder. Like, what is it about the chi of the tea that made you think of the Medicine Man Rolling Thunder?
Okay. The code is Spring Red, lowercase, 2 words. You can enter it at checkout. It's only good for this tea, Rolling Thunder, for either a cake of the tea or a smaller quantity if you want to try a small quantity and then buy a larger amount. The value of the cake, of course, it's priced lower if you buy a larger quantity. It's also really special just to have a cake. I think there's something about that that's quite wonderful. You can really see the complexity of it. These are the bud tips, not the leaves themselves, the golden ones. And there's a really nice balance of the golden tips, which are very concentrated in tannins, as well as the leaves, which are darker. But there's something about having a cake which is just really wonderful. You can age it, you can keep it for a long time, etc. So that's the code, Spring Red. It's also special to get a Yiwu tea that's priced at this price point because we kind of lucked out in the way we were able to get it. Teas from Yiwu right now are crazy expensive. We have a couple other Yiwu teas, but they aren't red teas, they're pu'er teas. So for those of you who don't know, this is like a crazy good price for a tea from Yiwu. The second question was the book Rolling Thunder. It's by Doug Boyd. It's just an extraordinary book. It was written, I think, in 1968 or 69, something like that. And this guy, Doug Boyd, wanted to study Native American shamanism and the medicine of certain Native American tribes. And he was able to find a couple medicine men who were still living, and you know, they were doing shamanic work. I mean, you know, like for example, one brief story from the book is Rolling Thunder is sitting in a car and they're driving north to Canada to protest cutting down this forest by these lumber, these lumber yards, or not lumber yards, but lumberjacks. I'm blanking on the word I'm looking for here, but they're driving north, and then Rolling Thunder says to Doug Boyd, "Did you bring my peace pipe?" Because it would be important for practice in establishing peace with the people they're trying to negotiate with. And Doug Boyd says, "No, you didn't tell me to bring it." And Rolling Thunder says, "We have to go back. It's essential to what we're doing here." And they're like hours away at this point. And Doug Boyd says, "We can't go back. We'll be too late to this protest," and and they go back and forth. And Rolling Thunder says, "You always make me do things the hard way." And Doug Boyd says, I don't understand. And then they keep driving for a while. And then all of a sudden there's this like spasm of sound in the back seat. And Doug Boyd looks over his shoulder, and Rolling Thunder sitting there with the peace pipe in his hands. And so there are these stories of his manipulating the weather and doing these extraordinary feats. But it's not about the phenomenology around him. It's really about his message and his way of living. And they're just wonderful stories. I just really enjoyed them. And the reason I named this tea Rolling Thunder is because I think there is some magic, some juju in the depth of these old growth trees. They're very old trees. And you can feel the energy if you kind of quiet down and drink the tea in that way. So they really, for some red teas, I find too stimulating for meditation, whereas this is one that really lends itself well to meditation. And also because from a sensational standpoint, they're really bright and kind of sparkly, the sensations through the palate. And they kind of sparkle. This is where you get into like tea geekery, like a slight astringency in the back of the tongue, so there's a kind of sparkling sensation along the upper palate. And to me, it sort of reminded me, I try to name the teas often based on some image in nature that kind of, I feel there's a correlation to some aspect of the tea. And so both the energy of the tea feels like rolling thunder. It's not shocking and strong yang, what we call yang qi, but rather it's smooth and uplifting, and it kind of rumbles. I feel like energetically it awakens the body in this rumbling sense. And it sort of reminds me of rolling thunder. When you see clouds out on a horizon, thunder is incredibly powerful and a mysterious force. The first rumble of thunder in the spring, they say, is what awakens the animals out of hibernation and tells the earth that the return of yang energy, of solar yang energy, has begun, and there's a transformation of wood and fire energy coming back. Rolling thunder, instead of it being strong thunder, it's more like it's a gentle awakening. And the tea is enlivening, but it's in this, you kind of wake up it awakens the body in this sort of subtle manner, but it's quite strong. And so that's the image that came to mind from nature. And then the last thing is, the music. I love Bob Dylan very much, and I've listened to every album many times that he's written. And that's one of my favorite, the music that came out of that tour, the Rolling Thunder Review Tour. I really loved the music. And then I read the book and realized where he named it. And actually there's a film about that tour that you can get on Amazon or whatever, which is wonderful. And I didn't realize that it was this man, Rolling Thunder, who had this influence on Dylan and his music and his life, and it kind of had a spiritual impact on him. So all those things together just felt like it made sense to me to name the tea that way. I also think I was listening to that album maybe when I first named the tea. So I got to get better at answering questions more succinctly because I don't know how. So.
I don't know if it's so much of a question, but I wanted to tell you, thank you guys so much for both of you and the team there to put these together. I think it's so wonderful to connect like this. And thank you for the Saturday class. That was a really great class on the Shachi, and I love that. And there was something that you spoke about that to me, it was so interesting because, I have a yoga school and I've had it for like a long time now, like 2 decades. So I've had a lot of time to think, especially this past year, like everyone else, what is this practice? Because to me, the tea is part of the yoga as well, and the yoga is part of the tea. It's sort of like everything is together. So the way that I'm seeing the asana practice now, it's more like an activation of light, if that makes sense. And in a way, like creating these roadmaps for the chi to flow through different parts of your beingness, and body, mind, spirit, and clearing stuff, and whether it's like some scars from this life or past lives, And I think the tea goes so well together. But one thing you said in that class about when you're sitting with someone that has been, nothing takes like practice and ritual and doing over and over and over. You can have a tea master that, or a tea person that read books for 1 or 2 years and they know a lot. But if you're sitting with someone who has been at it for, however long, but with a lot of dedication, you can feel that, right? And to me, I think it's the same thing with a yoga teacher. That's what I'm starting to think. And I'm talking about this because just so people put in perspective, I actually certify teachers, so I'm like, what is it when people come to me, like, what do they want? To me, it's like not so much anymore. Yes, there needs to be a method and a technique, of course, but it's way beyond that. Like when you walk into a person's room and you're dedicating that time, however many time, whether it's 40 minutes, 1 hour, an hour and a half, what you're getting really is what you spoke about, Colleen, which is, and I love the correlation, like, that person's tea practice, that person's like spending time in nature, doing walks, taking hikes, how they relate to other people. Are they getting enough sleep? I mean, the list goes on. And I think that that's what you're really getting, because it's such an intimate practice, and the transmission is so deep. And, beyond the technique or the sequence or whatever, which yes, all that could be very important, but I think sometimes you could even just do like 3 postures, and that is so much more and that could be so much more powerful. But I understand what you were talking about, that especially like with the water, there's the transmission of the energetics going into the water and into your body, into your field. But in yoga, it's very, very similar. And I think that sometimes when we have those experiences that are really deep with certain teachers, to me, it has become more of like, what that person represents, And like, I mean, in terms of like, I can feel the energy, because the transmission, that's the subtle body, maybe we don't see it with the eyes, but we can feel it. And so the asanas and the breath work is just kind of part of the path, right? But sitting with that person, it's so much more than just like a 200-hour teacher training or a 300-hour. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this practice, for example, Shelley was asking this earlier about like, what kind of question would you ask, or how do you connect with somebody, your partner, in the morning practice? Part of what we are cultivating in that practice is the ability to meet people at the level of being. So not at the level of a body of knowledge, not at the level of intellect, not at the level of ideas or opinions, but at the level of being. Ultimately, we're training to try and meet life at the level of being. So, if you walk into a forest, to not see trees and start to identify, okay, that's a birch tree and that's a ponderosa pine and but rather, can you relate to the beingness in the tree, the beingness in an animal, the beingness in another person? Because at that dimension of connection, there's oneness. There's already a connection that happens. And in order for us to recognize that all life is one, we have to cultivate a capacity to relate to life from the level of beingness. And I say that because with a teacher, they're not teaching information like you're saying. It's not about memorizing information. It's about them teaching from the level of being. For example, with Wuda or Master Lin or other teachers that I've spent time with, it's not so much about their teachings that to me has left a really strong impression and been transformative for me. It's really about spending time with them in their energetic field, in their level of stillness, in their level of the way that they live their lives, That's really been a deeper transmission than the information in their teachings. The teachings are more like tools to help me remember. They're like skeletons, but they aren't the living body of their teaching. The living body of their teaching is their beingness, you know? Um, Buddha shares this beautiful story about Master Lin where he said he would go live with him for months at a time in Malaysia. And I've spent a lot of time with Master Lin, so I can kind of relate to this. And he would drink tea with Master Lin and have these very profound experiences. And the tea was way better than any tea that he had made himself. And he would say, I don't understand what the difference is. And so he would watch Master Lin prepare the water in that kettle, use that tea, that much tea, this teaware. And Master Lin would leave later, from the tea house they were in or from his home. And Buddha would go and try to replicate it exactly, use the exact same teaware. And it was just so inferior, and the experience wasn't deep. And he'd just go, what is it? And he went and asked Master Lin, why is your tea so much better? And Master Lin would always say, he's like a very Taoist teacher. He would say, I just love tea. But his response was, he had dedicated his life for 30 years, or at that point now 40 plus years, to this study, into this cultivation and practice. And it's not that he knew more, it's that he is more. And I don't say he is more in some egoic sense. I mean, he is more in his relationship to this practice. A great yoga teacher, like we have a great teacher here in town who Jade and I have practiced with, the level of subtlety of awareness that she's cultivated in her practice, she's across the room with her back to you. And she says, Colin, let go of your right shoulder and breathe more deeply. And you're like, what the hell? She's on the other side of the room and not looking at me. I don't understand this, And it's because she's cultivated an awareness out of her own practice. It's so deep that it's coming at us. At the beginning, we talked about the mind and the emotions and the body working in unison together. She's gone so deep into the practice that she's teaching purely from experience. And that's backed up with also intellectual understanding of the tenets of the practice. So, Natalie, what I'm hearing you communicate is just that there is nothing to supersede practice. And that's why I say to people, the 3 bowls in the morning practice, once that becomes habit, then over time it will start, you'll know, okay, it's time to start exploring side handle. Or I tell people, choose one area of interest. Maybe it's Shopur. I mean, we're kind of coming out of the season of Shopur. So maybe it's just oolong teas, or it's just lightly oxidized red teas. Or maybe they just want to explore water. I want to understand how preparing water on charcoal or infrared or gas, spring water versus tap water versus filtered water, whatever. Choose an area of particular interest and spend time with it. Tea is not, if you're in a rush to learn things about tea, then you're approaching it from the wrong perspective, There's a reason that there are literally analogies or metaphors around the whole world about watching water boil, right? I mean, it's intended to slow you down. You could spend the next 50 years studying tea. There's still a lot more to learn. It's a lifelong study, and if you're not in a rush, it's a really enjoyable, beautiful study. There's nothing to supersede practice, like anything in life. And, my encouragement is just start simple. Rikyu is a famous Japanese tea master who was alive in the 1600s. And he has a statement that I really like, which is, if your life would be any different without tea, then you're not approaching it right, or your relationship to tea is incorrect. Tea is not about putting something on. It's not about getting more. In fact, over time, it should simplify your life, even if you're brewing in a complex way. It should simplify your life and diminish your ego and your sense of identity. If it's about how much teaware I have and how many different teas and how special my vintages are and this expensive cake if it's about all that, then it's not going to transform your life in any real meaningful way. It's just connoisseurship at that point. And for me, there's nothing wrong with connoisseurship. It's just that for me, this is a practice that's had a profoundly positive influence on my life. And so I'm kind of saddened by that if I see that a person is just relating to it as connoisseurship and sensations, and if that's all you're getting out of tea, you're missing a lot of what's possible and available through it as a practice. So
Yeah, and that's precisely the same thing I feel with what I was saying with yoga, and that's why I'm kind of, really trying to stress on this and understand, and how can I bring this practice in a different level to my teachers in the community and get them, because it somehow all these things can get commercialized, like, and I have all of them, by the way. I try to get them all in the living tea community. Many of them are coming to these things and they're getting the tea. We offer a tea practice, and so this is so great for them to have access to.
yeah, I think, thank you, Natalie, for all of your support. We appreciate it so much. And I would say it's amazing that there's a bird on your shoulder. And I also would like to say that, again, starting people with the practice of just simple leaves in a bowl, three leaves in a bowl in the morning. That is such a beautiful way to start. I just put a video on our brewing methods page on the website, which walks you through step by step the leaves in a bowl method. And literally, I say to people, watch that video, get a bowl and a big leaf tea, and for like 3 to 6 months, just brew leaves in a bowl, 3 bowls in the morning. That is such an easy and accessible and simple and inexpensive way to start a tea practice. And once the tea starts communicating with you, once the medicine of the tea starts really, especially if you replace coffee with tea, the influence that will start to have on your nervous system and on the organs of the body to flush and cleanse the body and to reset the nervous system, because tea is very steady, smooth energy, as opposed to coffee, which is a spike, and then, it doesn't facilitate meditation, really. So 3 bowls in the morning, and then a 15-minute to 30-minute to 45-minute meditation practice. That is such a beautiful way to start the day every day. And, I'm not going to go into it today, but maybe in the next week's meditation, I'll talk a little bit about a morning practice that includes movement. It includes, yoga or qigong or tai chi, but just the simple practice of 3 bowls and 15 minutes of meditation is a wonderful doorway into starting in this way of tea,
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think unless there are any other questions, we've kept it at an hour and a half today, which is pretty good.
I did have a question, Colin, about, and maybe I can just email you actually, because I don't want to keep this going all morning long. But you mentioned on one of your podcasts, you mentioned a product that's good for anxiety and depression. And I don't know if you meant the jade windscreen or if it was something else, or if it was a tincture.
Okay, the jade windscreen is really specific to COVID, as an antiviral and immune boosting formula that's being used throughout Asia as a preventative measure for COVID, and that's specifically for people who don't want to get the vaccine or who want to maintain a strong immune health, and with a number of antiviral herbs like forsythia and lianqiao and other herbs. So that's not what I was referring to.
Okay.
In terms of herbs and formulas that are good for anxiety, is that specifically what the question was? What I would recommend are, there are actually a number of things that I would recommend, but one, the I Can't Sleep tincture is, if you take a lower dose, it won't make you drowsy or sleepy. And we're getting some more of those in today if you don't see it on the website. That's a beautiful formula. It's based on a classic Chinese herbal formula. It's very calming and nourishing to the nervous system.
Okay.
We also have some different Shopur teas that would be very good for that. In particular, I would say Moksha and Samadhi. And if you email me, I'll look at the website and make a couple other recommendations for teas that are quite calming. And there's something that I am totally forgetting, and I don't know exactly what it is. But
Okay, that's okay. That's helpful.
yeah, the I Can't Sleep. We actually have a tincture called I Am Calm as well. We'll have more of that later. And it's similar to the I Can't Sleep tincture, but I think it doesn't have Melissa and Kava Kava maybe. It's got 2 or 3 of the herbs in it that specifically are to help facilitate sleep, or taken out. So it's really more about calming the nervous system and helping a person to alleviate what we call Shen disturbance, or kind of emotional agitation, you know.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so those, if you don't see them on the website right now, then give me a day or two and they'll be available then.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay. Anybody else? I think that's it. I unfortunately can't see who else is on this call, so it might just be the 3 of us. Thank anybody who is here. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you have a beautiful Thursday, and that the weekend is wonderful. We are going to have a class on Saturday, and tomorrow we'll send out a newsletter with a Zoom link and the theme of the class. So if it's a topic that is of interest to you, then feel free to join us on Saturday evening. And otherwise, we'll be back here next Thursday. And I hope everybody has a great weekend.
Are uploaded? Did you say that you're uploading these things on?
Yeah. So right now on the Living Tea YouTube page, you can see all the past meditations and classes with the description of what it is. And today I'm going to load those to the Living Tea website.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep. Absolutely. All right, everybody.
Thank you.
Adios. Have a wonderful day. Yep.
Thank you, Jade. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much.